Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to these reminders of Ramadan. Today is episode number 6, and I want to continue on the issue of certainty on account of what Sheikh Ahmed Ibn Atayla wrote as the stations of certainty, and he mentioned 9 of them. So I'm going to speak about not in the order in which he speaks about them, but just in relation to them. This is from the book Kitab al-Tanwir, which is one of the most famous books of the Shadili Tariqah. The subject for today is Tawakkal. Tawakkal, which means reliance upon Allah. And reliance upon Allah is one of the fundamental elements in developing yourself as a person, to increase your knowledge, to expand in general. Is the opposite of handing the affairs on account of relying upon yourself. So if you rely upon yourself in order to deal with your matters, then you will find yourself limited by the very fact of your own limitations. To escape from that prison of your own capacities and your own attributes, this is where Tawakkal comes in. It follows that rely upon your own attributes and your own power. It doesn't matter how big you are, how powerful you are, how clever you are, how wealthy you are. It's always a limitation. And it's equally clear that such limitations do not exist for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To find yourself limited by your own attributes means, therefore, relying upon yourself is limited in many accounts that one would imagine. The obvious ones are that you can only do the things that you have knowledge of, and then you can act upon only the power of your hands, and you can only expand on or develop or activate matters or develop matters on account of what is physically available to you in your possession, and that is always limited. To rely upon Allah is a matter of certainty, is an station of certainty, as Ibn Atayla says, precisely because you realize that the only actor that there is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To do things in this world, to imagine ourselves as actors, is nothing but an illusion. That's why when we say, I'm going to do something, we always say, inshallah. And this is the recognition that ultimately is all in the hands of Allah. If everything is on the hands of Allah, then take into account everything that is available to you. What Allah can do, not what you can do. If you think about what Allah can do is to expand your means beyond what is in your physical possession. Now this is known to people in the Tariqah, but only a handful of people are capable of understanding and to act upon it. To act upon this means to truly multiply your capacities infinitely. When you want something to be done, to rely upon Allah is to recognize that everything is in favor of what Allah wants, but not in favor of what you want. What you want is not going to happen, but what Allah wants is going to happen. So tawakkal is nothing but to desire what Allah wants. Now, once you understand what Allah wants, to make it into realization is to realize that is already happening. In the ultimate idea behind this is everything is perfect. Remember that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran defines the corruptors, he says, who are the corruptors? And he says, these are the people that they say, we are only trying to make the things better. We're just trying to make the things better. That is in itself corruption. To understand that everything is perfect, it doesn't mean that you cross your arms. It means that you are free from the limitations, the prison that you have imposed upon yourself. That the things that do not happen just on account of your capacities, but they only happen on account of what Allah desires. Seeing from this perspective our obligations with Allah, that they are command to us, should not be read in terms of what we can, but they should be read in terms of submission. Our religion is not the religion of I do what I can. Our religion is the religion of submission. Islam means submission to the will of Allah. Submission to the will of Allah means that I will do it, whether I think it's possible or not. I do it because I oblige myself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the process of doing something that it may look to you as something impossible. When you account to your own capacities, when you act upon it, then Allah teaches you. You learn in the process of doing something, even though you may think that is not possible. To the obligations that we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in regard, for example, and particularly to the question of riba, is an obligation that spans completely our capacities as individuals. Is a matter that concerns society. These are in general true about all the matters of muamalat. If you were to act upon these matters on account of what you can do as an individual, you will fail necessarily, or you will reduce them to a degree, to a level in which they cease to become social matters. For that you need more means. For that you need to look further, and you have to look deeper. And even the intellect that you may possess may not be sufficient. But the tawakkal is to know that Allah knows, and Allah is powerful, and Allah is capable, while we are not. Once you understand this, then relying upon Allah is to recognize that He is in charge of all the affairs, good or bad. And He is capable of transforming everything that we see around us completely and utterly, because He is in possession of all the power. And there are things that we think they are bad, and there are things we think they're good, but only Allah knows. That belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we may think something is impossible, but only Allah knows. And we may think something is bad, but it's good on account of Allah. We just don't know. This abandonment of one's will and to rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the will of Allah to desire what Allah wants, to make your will the will of Allah, this is wisdom itself. This month of Ramadan, which is a blessed month, is a month of opening. It's a month of sincerity and prayer and night prayer, and to open your heart to Him. It is also a good time to recognize the power of Tawakkal and to open yourself to the realization that to rely upon Allah doesn't mean, as Jamaluddin Rumi says, it doesn't mean you cross your arms, but it means that you can do anything that you want, that you are now free from the prison of the things that you thought you were capable, and you put yourself into the hands of Allah. In as much as you rely upon Allah, the larger will be your vision, the larger will be your possibilities of being, the larger will be your basira. In as much as you expand your basira, you will find things that you before you thought they were impossible, and now you think they are possible. That's why Jamaluddin Rumi says Tawakkal, the result of Tawakkal, is to become outrageous. In other words, that you do things that you could not even imagine you could do. That you can desire things you didn't imagine you could desire. Because now you're not relying upon your own attributes and your will and your capacity, but you are relying upon what Allah, the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This switch is wisdom itself. It's at the heart of any political activity. It is impossible to design political directions or programs on account of what we are capable of doing. That will only result in failure. But to desire what Allah desires and to organize people around what Allah has ordered, whether we find it possible or not, that in the sincerity of relying upon Allah, of Tawakkal itself, that's what produces results. And this is because Allah rewards Tawakkal itself, because relying upon Allah is in itself wisdom. The outcome doesn't matter. You may at the end of the day succeed or not succeed on whatever it is that you put into account, even if it is high, that you wanted to do. But to rely upon Allah, to lean upon Allah, to depend on Allah, that's in itself wisdom. Your success is already guaranteed by Tawakkal itself. So during this month of Ramadan, I remind you to put into your heart Tawakkal, to explore Tawakkal, to desire with Tawakkal, to become sincere with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to tell Him that you belong to Him, that you are His slave, and the affair that He has indicated for us is your affair. There is benefit in that, and there is wisdom in that, and Allah will reward you for that. بسر وبركاته بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم.